second grade friends. My name is Shelby and I'm from Partnership for Kids. Thank you so much for being at school today. Right now, going to school is your number one job. So it's really important to be at school when you can be, when you're healthy, and to be at school on time because it's teaching you how to be responsible. So one day when you have a job, you will already be prepared enough to get there on time and to go whenever you're healthy and you can. Today, our topic is inventors, and inventions make our lives easier. So instead of walking into a dark room with a candle, we can just flip on the light switch and have the light. And that's an example of an invention, how it makes our life easier. So our book today is called George Washington Carver. He was a really famous inventor, and it's by Dana Rau. And if you haven't already gotten a copy of this book, you will get one that you can take home and you can read with your friends or your family or someone in your house. Okay. Meet George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver was a trailblazer. When he was growing up, African American people faced unfair treatment. George did not let that stop him from becoming a famous scientist and helping poor farmers. George's love of nature led him to become a scientist. George was born in Missouri around 1864. His mother, Mary, was a slave owned by Mr. and Mrs. Carver. That made George a slave too. A slave is a person owned by someone else. Slaves were forced to work for no pay. So George was born in Missouri, so this big purple one, that's Missouri. And then right here, Diamond, this is where the city that he was born in. Many Southern farmers owned black people as slaves. When George was only a tiny baby, thieves kidnapped him and his mother. Mr. Carver traded a horse to get George back. George's mother was never seen again. The Civil War ended when George was just a baby. Now he and his brother Jim were free. Mr. and Mrs. Carver raised them as their sons. George was sickly and could not help with heavy chores, so he helped Mrs. Carver wash laundry and tend the gardens. The Southern Army surrendered to the North to end the Civil War. And a fast fact, when neighbors needed help growing their plants, they called on young George. They called him the plant doctor. A lifetime of learning. George loved to paint. He also enjoyed being outdoors, studying plants and collecting rocks. Mrs. Carver taught George how to read and write. He wanted to learn more, but he was not allowed to go to the nearby school because he was African American. And this is a picture of a reproduction of the house George grew up in. When George was about 12 years old, he heard about a school for black children. It was 8 miles away. He left his family and walked to the distant town. Mr. and Mrs. Watkins let George stay with them. Mrs. Watkins taught George how to use plants for medicine. And right here's a picture of George when he was about 13 years old. After finishing school, George worked at different jobs. Then he was accepted to go to a college in Kansas. When George went to meet the president of the college, however, he was turned away. The college would not accept black students. George moved to Iowa and entered art school. George loved to paint pictures of flowers. So here's George in a picture of the painting of flowers that he's done. George was an excellent painter. His teacher knew it would be hard for a black man to get a job as an artist, so she urged George to study agriculture, the science of farming. He was the first African American student to study at Iowa State College. He even became a teacher there. And then this is a picture of Iowa State College. Professor Carver. People heard about George's work. In 1896, he was invited to be a teacher at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. Tuskegee was a school for black men and women. George would be the head of the school's agricultural department. He looked forward to helping poor farmers in the South. And this is a picture of George in his lab. Southern farmers grew lots of cotton. Planting cotton year after year was not good for the soil. It took out a lot of the nutrients that help plants grow. George discovered that planting different crops each year made the soil healthy again. George taught his students how to keep farmland healthy. And right here, this is a picture, and George is the one circled in orange. George did not just teach the students at Tuskegee. Sometimes he brought the school right to the farmers. He taught farmers which plants were better for the soil. The peanut plant was one example. Peanuts added nutrients to the soil and provided food for a family. Right here it says George showed farmers the best plants to grow. There he is. George also showed people that peanuts, sweet potatoes, soybeans, and pecans were not just for eating. He invented ways to make them into candy, oils, soap, and lots of other useful items. Fast fact, George discovered how to make almost 300 products from peanuts, including cereal, milk, flour, dye, soap, candy, medicine, glue, paint, and gasoline. He also created more than 150 uses for the sweet potato. That is a lot of things that he invented right there. When George died in 1943, the world lost a great scientist and a great man. Throughout his life, George had shown others the importance of treating all people fairly, no matter what their color. He cared for nature, and he cared for people too. And we have a timeline of George Washington Carver's life down here. So around 1864 he was born, but we do not know exactly what date he was born. In 1819 he entered Simpson College to study art. In 1891 he entered Iowa State College to study farming. In 1896 he started teaching at the Tuskegee Institute. And in 1943 he died on January 5th. Okay, well, I hope that you all liked that book. As you saw, George Washington Carver did invent a lot of things out of peanuts and potatoes, which is really, really interesting that he could make soap, and they said milk and dye and stuff like that, which I think is really, really cool. So an invention that I use every day, I have a cat, her name is Ziggy. Here she is right here. And she has an automatic litter box that I got her. So what the litter box does, oh my goodness, is that after she does her business, it goes in and it scoops it all under this kind of hood, so it's not as smelly, and so I don't have to scoop all of it as often as I would have to if it wasn't an automatic litter box. And it's also not as smelly and it's not as messy, which is really, really nice. So that's an invention that I use every day. So if your teacher could just pause the video right now, and if everyone could go around and share an invention that they use every day. Maybe the invention they use every day, or you use every day, is a computer. Maybe you watch a show every day, so the invention is the TV. Maybe a really favorite toy that you like, that could be the invention that you use every day. So go ahead, pause and share, and then unpause when you're finished sharing, please. Okay, well, thank you all for sharing. I'm sure you all had some really cool ideas on inventions that you use every day, and I bet a lot of us also use those inventions every day as well. So, for the invention that you chose that you use every day, how do you think the person that invented that came up with the idea to invent that? So maybe if your invention was the TV, maybe it was that people couldn't always go to plays or something, so they made the TV so you could watch shows whenever you wanted, and things like that. So go ahead and pause the screen and then share how you think the person who invented the invention that you chose came up with that idea, and then unpause when you're finished sharing, please. Okay, thank you for sharing again. I'm sure you all had some pretty cool ideas on how they came up with the idea to invent those different things. Can you think of any inventions that would make your life easier? Maybe an invention that you would want to create is something that would pick up your toys when you're done playing with them so you wouldn't have to. Or maybe a machine that did your chores for you, did the dishes, made your bed, things like that. Or a machine that would do your homework for you. So go ahead and take a few seconds to think about something that you would want to invent that would make your life easier, and then pause the screen and share the inventions that you thought of, and then unpause when you're finished sharing, please. Okay, thank you again for sharing. I think an invention that I would want in my own home would be something that would do my own nails for me. I wouldn't have to do it myself and I wouldn't have to go anywhere to get them done. Just like an invention that I could just stick my fingers in and then I could do my nails for me and everything. That's an invention that I would want to use or invent. And I'm sure you all had some really cool and great invention ideas as well. But that is all I have for you today, second graders. Thank you so much again for being at school today and have a great rest of your day.